This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Episode 174, now available for download on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz? You getting ready for fantasy football playoffs?
No, because I'm in the toilet bowl.
You know,
I want to congratulate you and your wife, though, because this is one of the first times that both of you had made the playoffs. And I think the last time your wife made the playoffs, we had that debacle of a trade where basically she got Jamal Charles and all your good players for basically a bag of balls and a dirty bag of laundry.
I will still argue that was a fair trade. In the end,
not a fair trade.
D'Angelo Williams is a guy that is a producer late in the season. That's what you need. And credit to the ladies in our league. Both ladies that are signed up to play fantasy football in our league made the playoffs, and it's nice to see. And but for you and I, my goodness, we thought when the divisions were set, because in our league we got 4 divisions of 3 teams each, and obviously the team that finishes first is going to get an automatic bid. We thought, okay, if it's me, Adam, and my wife, one of us is probably going to be ahead. And I led for the most part, the majority of the season, but I succumbed to some injuries and the misses. The wife ends up atop the division and second place overall in the entire league. She earns a bye. Good stuff. She was genuinely excited, and what made it fun too was she was gripping because the Monday night game this week had implications for her because her opponent had both Brandon Marshall and T.Y. Hilton. She was up 20, and her opponent had both of those guys left. And, of course, it was mop-up time, and I had a feeling that maybe Brandon Marshall might get it at the very end. So she was gripping. She's like, I can't watch this. And then, of course, what made it special, Petty goes back, throws an awful pass, and I'm like, hon, you earned the bye. You secured it. And she was excited, and I'm like, listen, you can't do nothing. You did the best you could. Boom, bada boom. Watch it, see what happens. Don't be gripping. You did the best that you could. You obviously made a couple mistakes in the matchups in terms of, the starts and sits this week, but overall, she did a great job, and she got herself a first-round bye. Good for her.
It's absolutely weird this season in fantasy football because a lot of our blue chippers in our league, guys who make the playoffs year in, year out, people who have won championships, they're all at the very, very bottom of our league, whereas people who usually don't make the playoffs or sporadically make the playoffs, and people who are usually an easy win every single week in, week out, they're now in the playoffs, and they have buys or they've got great matchups where it looks like they're going to have a nice, easy path to sit there and try to secure a championship. So totally interesting year in fantasy football.
No doubt about it. You know a team that's not an easy win anymore? Our Detroit Lions, baby.
That's right.
And we'll start with this. How did you feel watching the Lions and what they did on Sunday? Because I was sitting there in shock because all we'd asked for was go out there and dominate a team that you think you're better than. And they went into, New Orleans and they played like a professional football team, ready, willing, and able to do some damage. And it looked like the Saints kind of took a week off and were like, oh, we got the Lions, so we're just going to kind of go through the motions. And if you do that against any team, the Saints didn't bring it. They were, performing at a level that was really embarrassing. Drew Brees was off. The offense was off and very predictable. The defense didn't do a whole heck of a lot to stop Matthew Stafford. And in the end, what you walk away with is a great victory, a dominating performance that really has started to change the narrative, not only nationally, but locally as well. And you've got the fanatics are going apeshit crazy about what the Lions are capable of. They're talking about NFC title games. They're talking about the Super Bowl. I'm just going, you know what? I'm going to take the same attitude that we said from day one. Let's just go week to week. Let's see how they do versus, Chicago Bears. But I was thrilled that the Lions performed that well on Sunday. It was nice to see a game where we could talk about all the positives that, that occurred in terms of the offensive performance, special teams, the defense played well. And you went in there, and I like the fact that, Drew Brees had a streak going of touchdown passes that he threw at home, and you stopped that. And that's the number one thing that shocked everybody was, we hoped when we talked to Josh Kassenstein, we asked, like, hey, is this going to be a high-scoring game? He's like, well, it kind of tends to lean the other way sometimes, and it kind of did. It wasn't a shootout, but I'll take that any day of the week when you go into someone's house and pimp slap them, and you walk away with the victory, and it was all good.
The one thing you can say about this game is it lets all Lions fans start to believe. It gives you cause for pause. And now you're like, you know what? We've got a shot. We are a credible team. We got a credible win. We went on the road and we beat a New Orleans Saints team that's high-powered. They usually have a great offense. And at home, like you said, Drew Brees has thrown, I believe it was 60 or 61 games straight where he's thrown a touchdown pass. In the end, all three phases of the game showed up. Your special teams played well, your offense played well, and your defense played incredible. I was probably most impressed with the defense, which forced 3 interceptions, didn't allow Drew Brees to score a touchdown, and only allowed 50 yards on the ground. That right there, I was like, whoa, this looks like we've got something. And you got to remember, too, this defense has basically been like plug-and-play players. Like, hey, a lot of injuries, let's get next man up, put him in, see what he can do. In the end, my biggest issue I had with this game, because let's be honest, I'm a negative Nancy, and I'm always pulling something out of the game that needs to get better. I have some concern with the offense, especially getting in the red zone as many times as they did, and all they were able to do is come away with field goals. Against maybe a better team, maybe if things aren't going your way or things start to go a little bit sideways, those field goals, not touchdowns, can come back and hurt you and kind of bite you in the butt. And that was probably my biggest issue with this entire game. Otherwise, I thought it was flawless. This was probably the most complete game I've seen the Lions play in probably 7 years, 8 years.
And so when the game started and you started looking at the injury report, you're like, oh, here we go again. Tahir Whitehead's not going to play. Now you're using a linebacking core that many people are basically calling thin. And then you got Marvin Jones, who is injured. And he's, obviously that explains why his performance over the last few weeks has been like this. He's hurt and he's not there. You go into it, you go, oh boy, the Lions are likely going to succumb to a bunch of injuries. But this is a new era, and Bob Quinn has provided more depth than in years past, where when you thought in the past if you would lose players like a Whitehead or a Marvin Jones, a top-line receiver in your offense, you'd think that, it's probably going to be a blowout, but they go out, and next man up. Andre Roberts does some things. T.J. Jones, who they signed from the practice squad, had a couple plays, and the offense continues to be professional.
What
it's
about
a nice
Zach
offense.
Zenner? What about Zach Zenner?
And you lose Washington in the middle of the game.
You lose Washington in the middle of the game, and you don't have that back who can run between the tackles because it's not really Theo Riddick's thing. You put Zach Zenner in, and Zach Zenner is just hitting the gap, picking up 5, 6, 7, 9 yards at just a carry. He was so impressive down the stretch, and he really helped kill the clock and really helped secure that game for the Lions. It was impressive all the way around, this entire team, which leads me to this question. How do you classify this team right now? Are they average? Are they good? Are they great? Do you consider them a Super Bowl contender at this time? Because through 12 games, they're showing you some things right now. They're showing you a bunch. And I think early on in the season, especially after they started 1-3, I buried this team. I was ready to sit there, pack them up, send them away, and I didn't want to bother with them anymore. And then over the course of the next 4 games, you're like, okay, well, there's something here. The next 4 games after that, you're like, okay, now there's really something here. And now 12 games in, we're looking at this team, and they have a chance to get a bye, to be a number 2 overall seed in the NFC, and sit there and get a bye week and host the playoff game all at the same time.
I would classify the Lions as a good football team, playing well and taking advantage of a schedule that's a little bit light. Let's be honest. We looked at the schedule when we first, started evaluating the Lions, and we said this team could potentially be 9-7, 10-6, not only because of what they could do, but again, the NFC isn't that strong. And the Saints, when you look at it for what it's worth, they got a lot of credit for beating Seattle, and they were very high potent in terms of their offense. But that also speaks to the level of competition that they're playing as well. There's not a lot of great teams across the NFC. There's maybe you can count on one hand how many great teams. I would say the Lions are a good team, and what they're doing is they're going into places and playing teams that are less than them, and they're going in and handling their business. You would expect that if the Lions play well versus the Saints, they can compete. The question was always, can they actually go and execute it? Now, this year, you look at the pieces that have been put in place, they've upgraded across the board. Pieces that Bob Quinn have drafted have contributed. You bring in guys, and they're not just guys that you bring in and they mess up. They come in and actually make a couple plays here and there. So that overall is a situation where the Lions have played the teams that are on their schedule and they're actually performing. And so I'm kind of want to already bypass this year and see next year's schedule and see how they do versus tougher competition. But Matthew Stafford's put the team in a great position to have success. It's a good football team playing very well. And now we look and we get a chance to look ahead a little bit because they haven't done nothing. And I like the rhetoric that came out after the Saints game. Hey, we performed well. We celebrated. We had a great performance. You had a lot of Lions fans there cheering, screaming their heads off, dressing up in costumes, making a trip of it. And if you were to make a trip to follow the Lions, going up against the Saints in New Orleans, why not? That's not. It makes for a good vacation. But now you're working towards the final exam, and it's time to see what they got going into the finals because you got 4 games. You just went 4-0 in the third quarter of the season. Now it's time because you have a little distance ahead of your competition in the NFC North. But what the Lions need to do now is stamp themselves a good team, win this division. That is the edict. Don't just go out here and get to 8 because remember, in the time of this podcast, they've won 11 games. They've had a playoff game in our run here on this podcast. They've done some things, but we also remember times where they were 8-4 and then went 0-4, and they faded late in the season. Just look to Jim Schwartz's era and kind of how his seasons progressed. Now, the onus is on you at home Sunday, Ford Field. Go out there and destroy the Bears. Get to 9-4. Don't start the process of letting the word same old Lions creep into people's thoughts because it's still there, but it's starting to kind of creep into people's memory, and we don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to think about same old Lions. A couple people still message me that they still have doubts, but I believe that the Lions are a good football team playing well, and there's reason to believe that this is a good season, and it could result in maybe, just maybe, what we're all kind of excited for, a playoff win.
I think they are a team that is good but not great, maybe a little bit better than good. This is a team that has a real shot to do something special. All right, if you look at what this defense has done through their first 12 games of the season, 8 games, they haven't won all these games, but through 8 games, they've allowed 20 points or less. And that's saying something because this defense didn't have Ziggy Ansah for large parts of it. They don't have De'Andre Levy, and I don't even know if you want De'Andre Levy on this team at this point. You know, you had a rotating cast of guys playing your secondary. It seems almost as if you were able to sit there, put all this together, and get good, get healthy, kind of all at once, but without your best players. So that right there screams that this team has something good going, that they can do something special going forward. And I think they have a shot. If you want to look ahead a little bit, they've got 4 games left this season. There's a good shot, and I've been kind of waffling back and forth with myself. They'll probably go 2-2, but I think they got a great shot to go 4-0. And just hear me out on this, okay? They're gonna take on the Bears this week. I think they beat the Bears. They're gonna go to New York and they're gonna play the Giants. And the Giants are very good at home, extremely good at home. All right, but they have a very average offense. And with the way this defense is playing right now, I think this defense can capitalize on that offense. On top of it, they're led by their mouth breather quarterback with Eli Manning, who is a turnover machine. Okay, you've got Odell Beckham Jr., who's a total head case, and he can be rattled. You know, I expect Big Play Slay to get in his face, say some things, and make him just kind of go all crazy and just kind of lose it.
And earlier today, some luck too. I seen one of the Giants players laid up in a bed.
Exactly. And JPP is done for the season. He's having he has a sports hernia, so he's done. And as far as their defense goes, it's a very good defense, and it's led by JPP. He's having a Pro Bowl season. So now they lose one of their best defensive linemen going into that game, even with JPP. I like what Stafford has done, and I like what this offense has done in order to capitalize on that very good defense. So I would take Stafford over that defense every day of the week, which leads me to the Cowboys game. This is super interesting, all right? I want to kind of lay this out for you because everybody has this Cowboys game as a loss, and I really think it's kind of a 50-50 game. Now, the Cowboys have an extremely explosive offense. It's ranked in the bottom third of the NFL, though. They've got a quarterback who can kind of run the ball. He can hit big plays down the field. They're led by Ezekiel Elliott, who is a monster on the ground, an absolute beast. He's a rookie. He's playing out of his mind. And they have a very stingy defense. They have a defense that's basically ranked in the top 5 in all defensive statistics. But let's look at what they've done. Week 1, they played New York, who's an 8-4 team. They lost 20-19. They went on to play Washington, who's 6-5-1, 27-23. They won. Chicago, 3-9. They won 31-17. All right, they went on to play San Francisco, who's 1-11, 24-17. Played Cincinnati, who's 4-7. They ended up winning that game 28-14. Took on Green Bay, who's 6-6. They won that game 30-16. Played Philadelphia, who's 5-7. 29-23 in overtime. Took on a winless Cleveland team, beat the pants off them 35-10. Took on a Pittsburgh Steelers team who's 7-5, 35-30 they won. Took on a Baltimore team, ended up winning that 27-17. Mind you, Baltimore 7-5, sitting on top of that division, just a scotch above Pittsburgh. Now Washington, again, 6-5-1, 31-26. That was your Thanksgiving Day blowout. Took on Minnesota, who's 6-6. That was that Monday night game, 17-15. I tell you all of this to let you know that the Dallas Cowboys, who are 11-1, has only beaten one playoff team, and that's Baltimore, who's 7-5. The other game that they played to a playoff contending team was the Giants, and they lost that game. They have played only two teams that if the playoffs started right now here today would be going to the playoffs, and they're 1-1. So they basically have played nobody who's worth a damn on their schedule, and that's why they're sitting where they're sitting right now, basically atop of the NFC. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in what Dallas is doing at this time. I think Detroit and what Detroit has done is a little bit more impressive. Now, I know Dallas has a rookie quarterback, a rookie running back, and I know everything else that kind of goes along with it, but they've not played anybody. They've not played anybody who's worth a damn. I mean, Baltimore at 7-5, that's your best team that you've essentially played, because I don't think the Giants are very good. And you lost to the Giants. You're 1-1 against playoff caliber teams. So what happens when you meet up with Detroit? It's going to be real interesting when they meet up on that Monday night. On top of it, they're playing Tampa Bay this week. Tampa Bay might be or actually they're playing New York this week, then they're playing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay might be the one team who comes out of the NFC South. So maybe that might be a win, might be a loss. You don't know. You have no idea yet. But they've played nobody so far, and everybody's giving them praise and heaping praise upon them. I don't think it's deserved at this point. You're 1-1 against playoff caliber teams. That's not good. Pittsburgh and Washington, they're on the outside looking in at this point in time. I mean, I know you're going to have to play Green Bay, and it's Green Bay. You know what you're going to get with Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is usually a beast. He usually comes into your house, and he wipes the floor with you. If they are out of the playoffs, I don't think you get a full effort from Green Bay, and I think you can win that game. That'll be something that we'll have to reevaluate at that time, but I think you've got a shot to go 4-0 down the stretch of this season.
Okay, I understand completely where you're coming from in terms of kind of pumping the brakes on Dallas, but the reason why they're getting so much love is they got a solid offensive line that's allowing Dak Prescott to do what he's doing. They're giving him a little bit more time. He is athletic, extending plays. At the same time, you got Ezekiel Elliott, who's a freak of nature. He's taking advantage of the holes, and he's reading the defenses really solidly, doing a lot of great things. So by metric standards, Dallas does a lot of things that leads to winning football. Great offensive line, allowing your running backs to hold the ball for a great time of possession. You know, they're averaging 395 yards a game on offense. And when you look at what the Lions are doing, they're doing it really against what metrics will tell you. They're averaging only 81 yards a game rushing. And they're only middle of the pack in terms of offensive and defensive rankings. But what it goes to show you, and what you see with the Lions is, and what a lot of people, and I think the reason why a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon is, they show a lot of heart. They compete. They try their absolute best to not make mistakes or to overcome them when they happen. And when you look at winning football, hey, if you're going to play close games and win them, that is a sign of a good football team. But I just think that in the end, talent wins out, and across the board, Dallas just has a little bit more talent. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go there and lay an egg. I think the Lions can go there and give Dak Prescott a game, but in terms of what likely is going to happen, as we sit here today, I would say that when they go to Dallas, it's going to be real close, and in the end, Dallas will win a real tight game if they have a lead late in the fourth quarter, because they'll just run the football, and the Lions haven't shown probably the compensity to stop a real solid running back or a team that really is a threat offensively outside of the New Orleans Saints. But I would not be shocked if they went in there and competed, because what you did to the Saints, if you could repeat it to Dak Prescott and rattle him a little bit, show him some schemes and some exotic blitz packages that he might not be accustomed to, you could do some things. But in terms of what is likely to happen in these next 4 games, I would say I could realistically see them going anywhere from 3-1 to 1-3. You know, it's everything is likely on the table. And what's going to be important for the Lions is this first game versus Chicago. Go out there, handle your business, because they got a young running back that's doing some things, causing some damage, and you don't want to go out there and make Barkley look like a superstar. That would be really embarrassing. That would be something that would really set off a lot of red flags. But then you go handle the Giants. Now you're sitting in a position where you might not need to have that pressure because you don't know how this team's going to handle. What if it all comes down to that Green Bay game at home with all the marbles? You would think all the pressure is going to be squarely on the Lions. How are they going to handle that? And you don't want, the season to end at Ford Field on January 1st because that would allow for a long 9 months. So just go out there and handle your business. I think when it all shakes out, I think around 2-2 is a fair expectation. I think that we're looking at a 10-6 football team that's going to be in the postseason.
So 2-2 will win them the NFC North.
I think it will.
I think you got a shot with it. But here's the thing. If you watch the way that this defense is playing, and you said they're doing things a little bit untraditionally, you kind of brought up the metrics and you brought up some stats there. If you watch the way this defense is playing, they're really not getting pressure on the quarterback. Ziggy Ansah's still dealing with an ankle injury. You can see it. You don't have De'Andre Levy out there, so covering a tight end or sitting there and putting some pressure from the outside, getting the edge, it's just not there for this team right now. The way they're doing it is they're playing nickel, and they're playing nickel with 3 safeties that are falling back, and they're sitting there blanketing everybody downfield.
Which made the Saints' strategy so ridiculous in that how are you going to dink and dunk against a team that's right there? You need to take more chances. You need to execute a little bit better. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable what the Saints came up with. It was terrible, and it resulted in a bad loss.
Honestly, it was bad offense, but the way that this defense is playing right now, it's next man up. We're going to play big nickel. We're going to throw out our safeties out there, and we're going to force them to create turnovers, and that's what they're doing. As long as Matt Stafford doesn't turn the ball over every single week on different downs, and you just kind of take care of the ball and do what you can do and kind of take what the opposition's defense is going to give you, they're going to put points on the board, and they're going to be in every single game. Do you realize that through their first 8 possessions, they punted 1 time? Punted 1 time. Every other time, they went down the field and they put points on the board. You punt 1 time in a game on the road against the New Orleans Saints, you're going to win that game, and that's what they did. And now going into this game against the Bears, it's going to be something similar. You're right. You don't want to make Matt Barkley look like a superstar. You don't want Jordan Howard to sit there and beat you. And that's kind of how this team plays right now, especially on offense. I think the defense blitzes and hits Matt Barkley, forcing him to get a little bit happy feet. Here's some footsteps. That's going to force some turnovers. He's going to end up throwing into coverage. And you got your cornerbacks and you got your safeties. Those guys right now are ball hawking, and they're looking to force turnovers and turn those into big plays down the field. On top of that, again, like I said, the Lions play a ton of nickel coverage right now with the 3 big safeties. I expect those guys to rotate in and out, maybe do a little bit more of their base defense with an extra linebacker there, and that's to help contain Jordan Howard because he's putting up big numbers right now. He looks like an absolute stud. I know that's the only reason why you are where you're at in fantasy right now is because you picked Jordan Howard up, and he basically drug your team's carcass all the way into the playoffs. Now, on offense, I expect them to use more of a balanced attack. I think what they're going to do is they're going to try to run the ball against this Chicago defense, and I think they're going to use the screen and use the screen passing game to kind of set up the passing game downfield. I know you want them to sit there and throw it downfield a lot more. I think you're going to see that, but it's going to be after they sit there, they try to run it up the middle, try to get the edge, work the screen pass in there, and then what they're going to do is they're going to sit there and try to take the top off the defense. And in the end, I think it works. I don't think the Bears are a very good team. I think they're absolute garbage right now. You got, your 3rd-string quarterback going on right now. And if we really talk about what Jordan Howard was going into the season, he's your 3rd-string running back. And that's what's been carrying this team. I think the Lions have an exceptional shot, and I think they roll, and I think they win big against the Bears.
Yeah, it should be a great game Sunday, an opportunity to really handle some business. But really, when you look at it, do you think there's an opportunity or there's a potential that the Lions are going to host a game at Ford Field, win the division? Because that's what's right in front of them. They have an opportunity to win this division, get maybe potentially if you go 3-1, win, an opportunity to have a bye. Have an opportunity to have someone come to your house with only 1 game to get to the NFC title game. That'd be unbelievable. I think that what the Lions are doing is just kind of really going along, being professional, seeing the success that they have, and they're also kind of taking advantage of other teams' weaknesses, kind of going, you know what? Hey, whoever's on this field is going to be able to do their job and handle their business. And so the part that's a little bit concerning is that guys are, injured, guys like Amir Abdullah, guys like De'Andre Levy, and they're starting to have whispers that maybe Abdullah could come back. Maybe at some point De'Andre Levy's going to work his way back. Do you think that at any possibility that those guys coming back could affect the chemistry or affect what they're doing? Do you want these guys back that have been injured? I mean, at this point in time, when I look at it, I'm kind of like, you know what? If De'Andre Levy can stay in the background, what is he going to bring really to this defense? Is he going to come back and really hurt the team? Marvin Jones obviously can help the team, but he's got to be much better because he's out there and they're not clicking right at this point in time. But Amir Abdullah, it would be great if something were to happen to have him. But what is he going to bring? Is he going to bring back some fumbles? Is he going to bring back some signs of the past where we get a little bit concerned in terms of his effectiveness? So I'm a little bit concerned just about the returning players because I kind of like what I'm seeing with this group of talent. You concerned at all?
Well, the big issue I have with De'Andre Levy coming back is the 2 games that he's played this season have been the most points that the Lions have given up on defense all season long. So is he a bad fit? Does he not fit the scheme in kind of what's helping the boat row down the ocean here right now? Is he going to come back in and cause waves? Now, we both agree he's a phenomenal athlete. The guy can play linebacker better than just about anybody in the league. 2 seasons ago, he was an absolute stud. He was a Pro Bowler. He got hurt, and he struggled to find his way back into the starting rotation. There's been a lot of talk. He's been kind of the impetus for most of the conversation because he's out there writing different things for the newspapers, making random comments, posting different blogs about different things. You see him flying around on the wings of helicopters. The next thing you know, he talks about how he's dealing with CTE and how he's, basically a gladiator, and He realizes the deal that he's basically just being used and he can be discarded at any time. And there's always this media storm that follows De'Andre Levy. I want him back if he can perform and if he's not going to sit there and mess with the mix. Because right now, what this team is doing is exceptional. The way that they're playing on defense with really no superstar impact. I mean, it's just a bunch of guys. That's really what it is right now. It's a bunch of dudes going out there and they're having a monster impact. If De'Andre Levy comes back, does he mess up that mix? And if he does, I don't want him right now. I don't. IR him. Send him someplace. It doesn't matter to me. I just don't want you screwing with the fruit punch right now because I like it. It tastes good.
It's good, right?
So don't mess with my Lions punch. All right? And now, as far as Amir Abdullah goes, I don't know what you're going to get out of him. Is he going to be able to stay healthy throughout the playoffs? I mean, when he does come back, are you going to be able to work him in? Would it be better if you were able to sit there and get a guy like a John Bostic in and be able to get more production out of him than an Amir Abdullah? Now, I think you need a playmaker on offense. I don't really think they've got an explosive playmaker on this team. I know Marvin Jones, when the season started, was that guy. He was the guy who was able to go deep, make a lot of big things happen. He's kind of quieted down. Now, Golden Tate's looked really good, but he's not as explosive as a guy like a Marvin Jones is, and he's not as explosive as a guy like an Amir Abdullah is when he's healthy. So you don't have that piece. I would love to get that piece. I'd love to get that impact player who can sit there and just make things happen. But if you're not going to get it and he's not going to be healthy, I don't want you because you're just going to hurt this team. If they're going to lean on you to do something that you can't do, you're just going to put this team behind the 8 ball. So don't mess with what's working right now.
Real quickly, I know you follow him a little bit, but the Lions re-signed Joique Bell, and then we heard just recently that C.J. Spiller got released. You think that Joique Bell is going to do a little bit better, is a little bit better football player than C.J. Spiller?
You know what, CJ?
Because he knows Joique Bell knows the system.
He does. And the thing is, Joique Bell is more a between the tackles kind of runner. And I think that's maybe what they're looking for. If it was me, I would just lean heavily on Zach Zenner because I was really impressed with how he cut up that Saints defense.
Yards after first contact, he just gets 3-4 yards after he gets bumped.
There was a point in that game where he was carrying 3 guys on top of one of his own tackles who was trying to pull a guy off. He just get on my back, I'm going to carry you. I'd much rather just roll with Zach Zenner than a guy like Joique Bell. I don't know what CJ Spiller has left in the tank. I mean, this is now, his 3rd, 4th team, the next team he signs with this season. So he's kind of bounced around a little bit, and I just don't think he has a place anymore. There comes a point where teams just start passing on you because you've got nothing left.
There's nothing left, yeah.
You just can't do it like the way you used to do it. And he's probably at that point right now where he's run his course, and he just can't do it. Because once one team lets you go, okay, maybe their fault. 2 teams let you go, now you start scratching your head. When the 3rd team lets you go, you've got absolutely nothing left. It's time to hang them up.
You think they just signed Bell for a couple of weeks just to see if he got some information about the Bears?
That's possible. I mean, that's possible. I mean, that's what New England does. So New England picks up guys who off the scrap heap who were just cut by a team because they're playing them that week. So wouldn't surprise me if he was immediately released come Sunday morning, come Monday morning. You're just like, yeah, okay, we're done. We're good. Go
all right,
away.
before we get to break, do you want to hear Levy speak? I mean, the media's clamoring. Everyone's kind of looking at going, when is he going to speak? What's he going to say? A lot of people are speculating that he's just going to do it because potentially maybe there was a grievance filed that he is obligated to speak to the media on some level when he's not on IR. So most people are I think, right. They're going to speculate he's just going to go up there and give the PR line of, hey, I'm trying my best to get back. I want to help this team win, and walk off without really saying too much. Do you care about anything he says?
If he talks about why he's injured, why he's not playing, I'm interested. If he's just going to go up there and it's just going to become a spectacle, I don't care. I don't want to see it. I have no interest to see it. But if he's going to go up there, he's going to answer questions. He's going to say, hey, guys, this is what's going on. This is why I haven't basically played the entire season. And this is where we thought we'd be at this time. We're a little bit behind schedule. At this point, I should have been playing, but there were some complications. If he gives answers and gives reasons and he answers questions, then yeah, I want to hear, because at this point, nobody knows. It's all speculation. We're all thinking that he doesn't want to play. He's just sitting there milking a paycheck until he can retire. You know, I mean, that's kind of where we're all at. There's been different reports that have all conflicted that he's cleared to play, but he doesn't want to play because he has a certain set of doctors that won't allow him to play. Like I said, it's just a media shitstorm that follows him around.
Messy.
Yeah.
Best way to describe it. It's just
very
messy.
messy.
Just messy. All right, we'll take a quick timeout. Very nice to have a segment talking about the Lions in glowing terms. Very, very good where we're at. 8-4, doing their thing, very professional. And let's keep it rolling. Destroy Chicago on Sunday, and let's make the next 2 games after that really something that will get everybody on board. Let's remove the doubt. That'll be the goal in the next 3 weeks. Doc and Jock, you're listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to TopCatTeamSales.com. That's TopCatTeamSales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat.
I'm just one man, but as a one-man
I'm one of Heath Slater's kids.
I got kids, man. I got bills. Thank you for hitting the download button on the Detroit Sports Podcast. Greatly appreciated. Each and every week, we love the support. Adam and I have been going strong since September of 2013. 174 straight Thursdays we've put out a product. I don't think anybody else can say that. Not for Thanksgiving, we didn't take off. Not for Christmas, New Year's. We put out new content for 174 straight Thursdays, and it's shown. Thank you for the support. We've been getting a lot back on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Thank you for everybody that's been messaging us through the games, each and every game. I greatly appreciate it when there's an event in town, and I can tell when you guys are passionate because our Twitter page just blows up. Thank you for all the support, and all we ask is just go check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Visit us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, and that's how we can continue to provide great weekly content. Keep the studio lights on, the mic's hot, and continue to roll along on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Dude, one of us was on another continent, and we still did the show.
Yes, sir.
That's how dedicated we are.
That's right. That's it. Every Thursday, you can find Doc and Jock all over the internet landscape. So, the college football playoff was released. Were you surprised at all at the 4 that the committee decided were the 4 best teams in the country?
No, not really. Here's my thing, right? Going into it, you needed, if from a Michigan perspective, and that's kind
Wait,
of...
Michigan didn't get in?
No, Michigan didn't get in.
What? What happened?
No. Look.
They got screwed.
You're number 3 in the Big Ten East, right? Isn't that what they are? Number 3? So, yeah, you're not getting into that. No, it's not happening.
They didn't give them the money. They didn't flash the cash. They didn't figure out a way to get Michigan in.
Look, all right.
Ratings, money.
Look, let me answer your question, all right? And I'm going to tell you how I'm answering it. I'm doing it from a Michigan perspective because I am a Michigan fan. Look, if you are Michigan and you wanted to get in the college football playoff, you needed either Clemson to lose or you needed Washington to play an extremely close game and possibly lose. It didn't happen. None of that happened. So going into Sunday afternoon, when everything was released, I already knew where they were going to be. I figured they'd be somewhere around 5, 6, maybe 7. All right. I was surprised at how far Penn State leaped up. They sat there and moved up to 5. I thought that was a little bit weird because they do take into account head-to-head matchups. I'm not going to complain about it. What's the difference between 5 and 6? Neither one of you guys are going to the bowl game or to the college football playoff, right? You're not going to prom. You're not dancing. You don't get to go and hang out with the pretty girl. Basically, you guys are going to sit there and you're going to take each other and go hold hands somewhere else underneath an apple tree. So good luck with all that. I don't really have an issue with what the committee did and kind of how the committee set everything up. I think the big question comes into play is, do they value conference championships? Because you put Ohio State in the mix, and Ohio State didn't win the Big Ten. Ohio State didn't win the Big Ten East. Penn State beat Ohio State, beat them 24-21, took them to overtime and beat them. And Penn State goes on to win the Big Ten East and to win the Big Ten championship.
What's Penn State's record? How many numbers are in that L column?
1.
2.
Is it 2?
Is it 2? They lost to Michigan.
You're right. It is 2. But they only lost 1 in conference.
Yep. But the reason and why I'm in agreement wholeheartedly with the committee was they took into account something else too, in that Ohio State played a lot better of a schedule. They beat, probably, Urban Meyer said it, and I believe wholeheartedly that's why they played Oklahoma, and they did some damage
and
against
you're right.
Oklahoma.
And they went on the road, and they did that. You're absolutely right. Absolutely. Here's the funny thing. I think it was in 2006, you had Urban Meyer come out and basically say, if you don't win your conference, you don't deserve to be in the playoff, or you don't deserve to play for this. And here he is. Here he finds himself, and now he's going to make an argument to sit there and go the opposite way. So when a coach speaks, take it for what it is. Take it for what it's worth. There's just a grain of salt. That's all you can really do with it. That's my big concern is going forward. How are we sitting there and how are we judging these teams? How are we getting them into the Final Four? I don't necessarily have a huge issue with Ohio State going, but I think it puts a little bit of a smudge on Penn State because they did win the Big Ten East. They did beat Ohio State. And these are all things that were highlighted as directives to have if you want to get into the Final Four. Is you got to win your conference. You got to sit there. You got to take head-to-head into account. You got to play well. Now, I know that they sat there and they almost got shelled by 40 by Michigan. I get it. But the committee also takes into account injuries. And at the time, people are arguing that Penn State's linebacking core was totally decimated and they're playing their 6th, 7th, and 8th linebacker. So if you're going to take that into account, why don't you take that into account when they sat there and they got smoked by almost 40 by Michigan? It just, again, the committee does what the committee wants to do. And I think the only reason Ohio State gets the nod to go play in the Final Four is based upon name recognition. That's it. It's name recognition and it's money.
And they want, exactly, games that are going to be competitive. Michigan State did a disservice by when they went out to the playoff game versus Alabama, getting waxed 38-0. Now, they look at ratings. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is, keeping it simple, and that's what I like to do, is if you want ratings, I don't think that playing on December 31st is ideal. I would say that, move it to, the 2nd or move it to a week later. Playing on December 31st just doesn't lead to, many people planning to see potentially Penn State versus Clemson. I don't think that would be one of the matchups that people want to see.
Look, when you're planning your New Year's Eve, I'm not doing it around college football. The only way I'm doing it around college football is if my team's playing.
Exactly.
And you found yourself in that predicament last year, and you made it an appointment to watch.
And luckily, the game was over pretty quickly. I mean, at halftime, it was somewhat close, but you didn't. If you follow the flow of that game, you really didn't get a sense that Michigan State was going to really do something. So I kind of stopped around 3/4, I believe.
Exactly. See, and look, I'll keep tabs on who's playing, and I'll keep tabs on what's going on, but it's not appointment viewing for me. Chances are I'll probably be working the night shift that night, so la-di freaking da for me, but I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to make it a point to go and watch that game because my team's not playing in it. So I'll keep tabs on it because I'm a sports fan. I'll keep tabs on it because I do a show with you. I'll keep tabs on it because it's something that I'm interested in, but I'm not going to sit down and I'm not going to block out basically 8 hours of my day to watch both of these games on New Year's Eve. I'd much rather get dressed up. I'd much rather go drink a couple beers. I'd much rather go get saucy and hang out with my wife.
Now, at least to some other points of view regarding, okay, and I'm curious to get your opinion on it because I'm firmly locked into, hey, let's just ride out and see what this college playoff is going to progress in the next 3 to 4 years. The top 4 teams, there's going to be debate, but they are valuing what you do in the entirety of the season. And I like the fact that there's, undefeated Alabama team and a couple one-loss teams, and you don't want a situation where you have too many 2 and 3 lost teams trying to compete. It kind of devalues the entirety of the regular season. I really like the fact that every game that you play has such implications, and when you lose one, it kind of sets things into turmoil. And I didn't really like all the talk about Michigan getting an opportunity had Washington lost because, of the fact that I really do kind of value a little bit conference champions, but I also understand what the committee did. But it also lends to the debate as to possibly extending it out to 8 teams. And that way you could have had potentially a matchup, maybe letting Western Michigan in, letting them get slaughtered by Alabama, and going and extending it out, giving an opportunity to 4 more teams. And that way you allow probably the limit to be two teams. That way teams like Penn State, teams like Wisconsin, whereas they don't maybe, have the cachet in terms of a marquee name, but they get an opportunity to have value being that they played in the Big Ten and they were playing pretty good. There could have been an argument that you would have let Michigan in had there been 8 teams. What do you think? Should they extend it out? Should they try it? Or are you down with keeping it as is at 4? I'm down with keeping it as is. I like the way they've done it. I believe there isn't really too many outstanding teams that have been left out. These first 3 years that they've had this college football playoff, I think they've gotten the 4 teams that have been pretty much playing the best in the first 3 years. So I'm down with it. Keep it at 4.
The thing is, you don't want to devalue the regular season, and you don't want to devalue conference championships. I think that's the 2 things you've got to keep in mind. So I would probably extend it out to 6 games. I would give the first and the second overall seed a bye, and then I would have 3 and 6 play each other, and 4 and 5 play each other, and then those guys would go on to play the 2 teams that had the bye. That way you're working. You got to remember you have it's Power Five schools, so you've got all conference champions in, and then you can either do one at-large bid for the best team in the nation who didn't win their conference championship, or in this case, you've got a team like a Western Michigan who went undefeated throughout the season. You can make a special exception and put them in.
So this year you would have added Penn State and Western?
I would, yes, that's what I would have done. I would have kept Michigan out because Michigan, look.
They finished 6th? Did they finish 6th?
They finished 6th. As much as I would want them in there, you've got a Western Michigan team who went undefeated. I would put them in there because I feel like they deserve it. Whether or not they get slaughtered or not, that's not for me. That's for PJ Fleck in Western Michigan to figure out, okay? But I would put them in because I feel they're deserving. You know how hard it is to sit there and go 13-0? On top of it, every team that was ranked above Western Michigan, in some way or some form, it's like 6 degrees of Western Michigan. Somehow you lost to Western Michigan. You could make a case because if the teams that had lost, only team who didn't was Alabama, because Alabama and Western Michigan were the 2 teams that went undefeated. Every other team that was sandwiched between those 2 schools, some way or another, they have a loss on their record, and that school somehow or another lost to Western Michigan. So Western Michigan is a deserving team, and I would have put them in there. I would have put them in there as the 6th seed just because of the conference they play in, but they did go undefeated. And I would have had them play, who was 3? Ohio State was 3 in this case, so I'd have had them play Ohio State. If Ohio State rolls them, Ohio State rolls them. I mean, sometimes you're going to have games like that where it just doesn't seem like it works, all right? But I would then, have Penn State play Washington in this case, I guess. Actually, no, you know what? No, because you gotta include all 5 of the Power 5 schools. So Oklahoma would have to get in there somehow. So I probably wouldn't have Ohio State in there the way I would end up doing, because I feel that you have to put an importance on the conference championship. Otherwise, you're devaluing them. So you'd have Alabama representing the SEC. You'd have Clemson representing the ACC. Oklahoma representing the
I'll look it up here. Oklahoma Conference.
Okay. And then you'd have Western Michigan in there because they were an undefeated specialty cause, an at-large bid. And I would give it to Penn State because Penn State deserves it. Was it a Big 12?
Big 12
conference, yeah. So you'd have all them in there, and Ohio State would be on the outside because they didn't play for a champion. They didn't play for the conference championship, and that's just the way I would do it. You've got to check certain things off the list in order to be able to play for this. It's an honor and it's a reward. And I know that the committee says, hey, we want the best schools to put up the best matchup, and we want to make this interesting, this, that, and the other thing. And do I think Ohio State is better than Penn State? Yeah, probably. All right. But we go back to the one time that they met this season, and guess who won?
Penn State won.
Do I think that Michigan was better than Ohio State? Yeah, I do. But you know who won? Ohio State won. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's how it is. That's how it works out.
So it leads to this kind of discussion because I really was fascinated with Michigan fans' reaction. They tried their darndest to make arguments that, hey, had Washington lost, we should have moved up. Look at this, look at that. So in essence, and I kind of agree with it, but from a opposing standpoint, it was a little bit irritating. Do you kind of agree with a little bit of politicking potentially to try to get your team in? Had Michigan, let's say, for example, gotten in that way, let's say that maybe they looked at Washington's performance and put Michigan in. Would that have been an outrage? Would you have completely lost your cool and said that this is a unbelievable system had they put them in? Because you could make an argument that Michigan, had they had a solid quarterback, had they not had some things fall their way, that they were playing, with that defense on a level that could have maybe drawn some attention. Do you care about politicking in terms of trying to get in? PJ Fleck did it a little bit, but he ended up getting himself in the Cotton Bowl because the other teams did fall out and lose.
Here's the thing. Michigan lost 2 games.
I'd much rather earn it, man. Earn it. State earned it. It was so much sweeter.
Here's the thing. Michigan lost 2 games by 4 points. Okay. Do I think that's good? Yeah, that's interesting, right? That's what it is. But you still lost 2 games. Michigan had every opportunity to sit there and seal themselves into playing for the Big Ten and then playing for the college football playoff. They blew it. They blew it when they went to Iowa and lost on a field goal, and they blew it in overtime against Ohio State. So they blew it. Would I have been upset if they got in? No, because at that point, it's just win and get in. Do whatever you got to do. However you got to get in, get in. Just get in. All right? And you can make a case that Michigan deserved to be in there. Now, would I have been outraged if Washington went on to beat Colorado the way they did and then Michigan somehow leapfrogged them? Yeah, I'd be kind of outraged. I'd be like, there's no way Michigan really deserves to be there. I wouldn't be upset about it because I want Michigan to be in it, but there's no way in hell that Michigan deserved to go and play, especially in that situation where Washington sat there and obliterated Colorado. Just dismantled them from start to finish.
You want to earn your way in. It's the best way to do it. Michigan State, in terms of how they played in the Big Ten title game, you got to at least get to the Big Ten title game to have at least some type of leg to stand on in terms of your argument. But in the end, it worked out. All the teams won that were supposed to. The conference titles were decided. And, in the end, maybe it will shake out that in the future there will be 16 teams and each division winner gets a spot and maybe 2 at-large bids. I like your idea. 6 is not bad. I'm down with 4. You understand it is what it is. The networks are there to create debate, create conversation, kind of leave room open. It was magical what they did when they said the decision between 4 and 5 was super tight. That sparked off a week of debate, keeping them in the conversation. It kind of played into the Michigan fans, keeping their hopes alive. And what it did was you now added a fan base. Listen, you just got to be honest and call it sometimes and be willing to say it. Sometimes we do it. I do it on the Twitter page. I'll just throw out stuff just to get a reaction. But that's what you're supposed to do. I need eyes on my Twitter page. That's what you do. I don't want a tweet that gets read by one person when I can throw out an idea and get it read by 50,000 people. So that's what you do. You get eyes on your product. So what did they do? It was genius. They got eyes in Michigan on the Washington-Colorado game. The rating in Michigan was huge because there was people invested in Michigan and they heard what was said and they go, you know what? If Washington loses, we're in because of that one little comment. And that's the job. He should get a firm handshake and an applause. But a little bit too much of that on ESPN when you do 4 hours of debate about why Michigan should be in and this and that. And
you know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for guys like Danny Cannell.
Oh, man. How do you debate that for 4? And I was telling Jason, 4 hours of this? It's like, come on, dude.
I'll just be like, come on, we got to move on. I'm tired of this already.
4 hours of debate. My goodness. But I like what they did. Their job is to create buzz, create controversy, and do it in a way that still legitimizes what you're doing. And so far, I'm in agreement that, and I think you are too, this is better than the BCS.
Yes.
Committees have real people on it. I know that you can't have a uniform standard all the time, but at least some standard that they're keeping, and it makes the regular season unbelievable. It makes it unbelievably tough, which in essence, when you get it, like Michigan State, like Ohio State, it gives it value that teams like that have made it and have earned that prestige of being in the college football playoff. Michigan will get there probably in the next 10 years, maybe 15, maybe not with Jim Harbaugh. You never know. But it's a prestige that you need to earn, and you don't need to politic. In the end, Michigan accepted an invitation to the bowl game that most people thought it's going to be up against Florida State. And it's not even on New Year's Day, December 30th.
It's a Power Six Bowl, though.
Power Six Bowl,
it's
good time
it's
money.
New Year's Six Bowl or whatever they call it.
Orange
so
Bowl, Florida State. It's a decent
you
matchup.
take it.
How do you feel about it?
I like it. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. This is probably going to be. You remember how last year it was Ohio State versus Notre Dame? That was the big game that wasn't a college football playoff game that everybody was kind of glued to and everybody wanted to see. I think that's going to be this game this year. This is going to be the big game that's not one of the top four teams playing in it. So I think Florida State's going to get a very pissed off Michigan team that knows that they blew their shot to play in the college football playoff. So they're going to be looking for some retribution. I think Jim Harbaugh has got a lot to prove right now. Look, he won 10 games last year. I think he's looking to build on that and get his 11th game this season. It's going to be interesting to see how Michigan defense handles a good quarterback. They've got De'Andre Francois at Florida State. He's thrown for 3,128 yards, tossed 18 touchdowns. He's a young mobile quarterback who has a ton of talent. He's scored 4 rushing touchdowns this year. He's extremely dangerous. However, he has thrown 6 interceptions, and he's been given to make big mistakes. So I'm expecting Michigan to blitz a lot, send a lot of blitz packages at him. In the meantime, they're going to have to contend with running back Dalvin Cook. He's the nation's 7th ranked running back. He's rushed for 1,620 yards this season. He averages roughly 135 a game, a little bit more than 6 per carry. So he's explosive. He's a guy who can do a lot of different things on the ground, make you look silly. He scored 18 touchdowns as well this year. On the flip side, Michigan's offensive line is going to have its hands full. And I think that's where Michigan at times this season has fell apart. It's with that offensive line. Whether it's not being able to get a first down, whether it's not protecting Wilton Spaeth, whether it's trying to put Jabrill Peppers in a wildcat and run him up the middle to get something. I think this offensive line has struggled at times, and I think they're going to have their hands full with Florida State because they like to sack the quarterback. They lead the nation with almost 4 sacks per game. So it's going to be interesting to see how Michigan handles that defensive line from Florida State. On top of it, they have the nation's top cornerback with Travis McFadden. He has 8 interceptions. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. There's going to be a lot there to, almost like an onion, you can peel it back in, just different layers of different things that are going to be going on. This game will be won in the trenches, whether it's on Michigan's end with their defense sitting there getting to the quarterback and containing that running back, or if it's Michigan's offensive line being able to move the line of scrimmage and help pick up first downs. I think it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, my goodness. So I assume that...
Can you tell them all in?
Yeah, you could tell on December 30th. I know who will be giving me some insight regarding that game because, I personally don't care.
I know you don't.
No, I don't care, not one bit.
Wait. What game's Michigan State playing in? They got a bowl game?
It's a disaster. Let me talk about Michigan State.
No.
3-9, everyone goes through it.
No bowl game?
No bowl game.
What?
We need to put a wrap on that disastrous season.
Oh, wait, hey. So let's talk about Michigan State's defensive line right now.
Oof.
So Malik McDowell,
Gone.
Yeah, he just declared for the NFL.
Smart.
So basically, you've got deck furniture and you've got deck furniture for a defensive line.
We might not make the bowl game next year. It's going to be super tight. It's going to all depend on who he names to be the starting quarterback.
Marky D's going to have his hands full next season.
And he's doing some bad things PR-wise because if that season happens and you don't make changes, I think a lot of the fans are like, really? Not one?
Do you not think
on your coaching staff?
He's going to make changes?
He has to.
He has to. He's too smart of a guy. He's too good of a coach not to.
Yeah, I hope so because it's one of those things where you had an awful season. You kind of, look a little bit stale, and it's one of those things where the mistake you made in choosing the wrong quarterback really set you back 1 year, and the train's moving, and you got to keep up.
Do you really think they chose the wrong quarterback?
Yeah, they chose the wrong quarterback.
Here's the thing. Connor Cook, at times, over the course of his last 2 seasons at Michigan State, really helped save that program. And I think he did an admirable job. I think he did a very good job with what he was given. I think sometimes that offense is a little bit stale. And I think Connor Cook was able to cover a lot of that up just with his overall ability. You got a guy like Tyler O'Connor who's not as explosive of a player. Maybe doesn't understand the offense as well. Maybe doesn't read defenses as well. And I think you seen what you had with that offense in just a very average quarterback. Connor Cook's an NFL caliber quarterback. He got drafted for a reason. He's in the league for a reason. I think what you had there was you had a quarterback who was able to cover up a lot of coaching foibles and flaws and make things look a lot better. He was basically given, chicken it and made chicken salad on a consistent basis for Michigan State. So much, though, that he was able to get them into the college football playoff.
And as a supporter, now after the season, the theme will be messiness because obviously there was news made in terms of Malik Zaire from Notre Dame was released. And he has the opportunity, and on his short list is Florida, Michigan State, Pitt, and Wisconsin. And so now you got a situation where you could potentially be delaying the progression of your young quarterbacks. Does Michigan State select Malik Zaire, and do they form a marriage for 1 year of success? And that'll be something that's going to be looked at. I don't think the chances are super great right now, but there is an opportunity that he could go there for 1 year.
What was the schools?
Malik Zaire is looking at Florida, Michigan State, Pitt, and Wisconsin.
Okay, so Wisconsin maybe, but I think Wisconsin and what Paul Chryst has up there, I think he likes. I think he went with a freshman quarterback this year. So I don't know why he would bring in another quarterback to sit there and challenge when he sat there, played in the Big Ten championship game, and that was a team that was in contention all season long. So I don't think he goes there. I don't think I choose Pitt. Maybe I don't think so. I don't think it's a big enough program for me. You let me know. What's your thoughts on Messiah DeWeaver? Is he the second coming of Christ? Do you think he's going to be? Do you think he's ready for that spotlight right now? Because that I think is the big question, because you can go to Florida. Florida's a big enough program. You'll be playing in the shadow of Alabama. So does that suck? Yeah, a little bit. But still, Florida's a big enough program that if you can sit there and make them relevant and maybe win an SEC championship, I think right there you staked your claim. And hey, you know what? The sky's the limit for you. Otherwise, it might be Michigan State. It depends on what's going on with Messiah DeWeaver, because if you tell me that he looks like he's going to be the second coming of Christ wearing green and white, I'll believe you.
Yeah, he is 6'4", 215, rated highly across all the recruiting sites. He's a guy that's been a winner.
He's a redshirt freshman?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So
yeah, see, you know what? So maybe he doesn't have a spot here, because does Mark D'Antonio want to sit there and delay him? If
that's the concern, is that because it's about winning.
It is about winning.
And if you get another year of development and you get an opportunity to sit and see what Malik Zaire can do, it might help bridge the gap. But the opportunity right now is that Michigan State has to have a comeback season. They have to get to a bowl game, because the momentum, it's like you don't want to have the situation where it's the Big Two and everybody else in the Big Ten, and you don't want to fall behind. So D'Antonio's going to have a tough job, and we'll see if Malik Zaire goes there, because there's been an exodus of quarterbacks under Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, and he's got 1 year of eligibility left, and you might look at a situation where a quarterback with experience could do some things for you, especially if you have a wide receiver core that could do some things. So
Brian Kelly doesn't even want to be in Notre Dame right now.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on Jabrill being named to the Heisman?
I felt like, you know what, he did deserve it. He had a lot of great stats. He's not in the top 3, but if the number's 5, you could argue 4 or 5. I'm not going to have nothing I'm not going to object too seriously for it. I don't think that he'll end up in the top 2 in terms of voting, but hey, why not? Go up there on stage, enjoy the experience, hobnob, network yourself a little bit. Jabrill did enough to warrant him being there. And top 5 Heisman, congratulations. Some will argue that he might not have been the best defender on his own team, but I look at the team goals. They fell short for the team goals. Individually, Michigan's getting accolades galore regarding what that defense did. You got to give them credit. That defense was outstanding. Don Brown gets a lot of credit. The schemes were great. You had an opportunity to really, elevate the nature of the defense. It was rated highly all year. But Jabrill Peppers, you never really want people to think that you could have did more. I felt like he could have did a little bit more. Not too much more, but I felt like he could have did more versus Ohio State. He could have did more in other games. There were some games where he didn't have the best performances, but in the end, you're on the stage. Good for you. Enjoy the experience. And I'm looking forward to seeing where he ends up in the draft.
It's funny because you're a Michigan State fan. I'm a Michigan fan. And yeah, I feel like you were, for some of what you said, I feel like you were reading some of my notes here, but I have like I feel like it's super funny. Like I don't feel like he's deserving of it at all.
Yeah.
The beginning of the year, he played incredible, right? He played incredible against lesser talent. Do I think he's a very versatile player? Absolutely. Do I think he was deserving of all of the Big Ten accolades that he's got this season? Absolutely not. He got Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He's not even the best defensive player on his own team. Jordan Lewis is. It just blows my mind, all the hype, because that's what this is. He's basically, he has been created by ESPN. He's a hype machine. That's what he is. He played awful playing that Wildcat, showed me nothing. It was basically the same exact play over and over, halfback dive, and he would get stuffed for a yard, maybe 2 yards falling forward. That's all he got. Do I think that he did a good job playing linebacker? It's a position that was new to him. Yes, it was more of a nickel is what he played. He played more nickel corner, not necessarily a linebacker. Where they put him in their scheme was in the position of an outside linebacker, but essentially he was a nickel corner. That's what he was. How he translates to the pros will be interesting. I don't think he is one of the top 3 college football players. I think I could find somebody else to take a top 5 spot from him if I really wanted to. I think it's good for Michigan. I think it's good for the program to be able to say, hey, we got a guy who's in the top 5 for the Heisman. His name's Jabrill Peppers. He won all these awards. He's an extremely versatile player, plays offense, plays defense, plays special teams, and does a lot of good things. You realize he has 1 interception his entire college football career? That's not good, bro. Not good. And look, you showed me nothing when you played offense because you weren't really dangerous because everybody knew what the play was. And when you played defense, there were times where you came up really small. I think it's laughable that he's even in the Heisman conversation, to be honest with you. And I'm a Michigan fan.
Hey, you keep it real. That's what we do here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I would say, yeah, firmly, he holds on to the 5 spot, and that's about it. But he did some things in terms of one of those guys where you had to at least look at him and scheme around him. He did have a lot of tackles for loss this year. He was in the mix. He did a lot of different things at a lot of different positions, and he was a guy that was a key contributor to Michigan doing some things against a lot of good teams. So you give him the credit. Hey, you don't hate on it too much, but you can make the argument that there are other more deserving athletes and maybe more on his own team. But hey, what are you gonna do? So all in all, how would you grade Michigan's season this year? A-, B+?
Well, if you look at what the goals were to win the Big Ten East. You failed. Win the Big Ten championship. You didn't even have a shot to play for that.
Just give him C-.
College football playoff. Didn't have a shot for that. You did win 10 games and you got a chance to win 11. So much like last season when we were about this point, it's all going to depend on what happens in that bowl game. If they can go out and they handle Florida State or they look good and they win that game against Florida State and they take home the big bowl of oranges, then I think it'll be a good season. I think you could grade it out to maybe be a solid B. Going into this, I'm going to give it a C because you achieved none of your goals. You achieved nothing. All you did was you sat there and you were able to put back-to-back 10-win seasons together, and that's all you've done so far.
That's not too bad. Not too bad, though, in a couple years where he doesn't have his full allotment of talent. Remember, the level of quarterback can get a lot better, and by all accounts, the recruiting, if you follow our guy Brandon Justice and the Justice Report, the level of recruiting is outstanding, and there's a lot of things to look at. So pay attention to Brandon Justice and the Justice Report, and we'll keep you in the loop here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network regarding all things Michigan recruiting and what to look for in the coming seasons.
See, my big issue is, I'm going to cut you off real quick. My big issue is he's losing a lot of senior leadership this year. Next year, you're going to have a younger offensive line.
And tougher schedule.
Yes, a younger defensive core and defensive unit. You're going to be missing playmakers like J.U. Chesson, Amara Darbo, Jake Butt. You're going to be missing these guys. They're not going to be on this team next year. So who steps up and who fills those roles? And if they do fill those roles, do they fill them at that level or better? And I don't think you get that next season because it's going to be a much younger team. If there was a shot for them to get into the college football playoffs, it was supposed to be this year. And going into the season, I didn't think they had a chance. I thought they'd be on the outside looking in. In the end, they're on the outside looking in, but there was an opportunity for them to seize it if they went and they handled their business in Iowa and handled their business against Ohio State, and they let those games slip through their fingertips.
All right, we'll take our final time out. We'll talk Detroit Tigers and the news made during the winter meetings. Big trade happened in Major League Baseball. All of that to wrap up this episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast. Doc and Jock, you're listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com. And get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com. This song makes me want to act like the guy who's outside in the parking lot. I'm looking through the studio window right now, and this guy is rapping so hard in his car.
Set the scene, man. Look out the window. What do we got here?
Well, okay, so he's driving a Ford Taurus. He's backed into a spot. It's like a light sky, gray blue car, and his hands are going a million miles a minute. Yeah, they're just all over the place, and they're just left, right, center, head just shaking up and down. And he's just, dude, he's feeling it right now. I mean, dude, he's cussing at his driver's side window right now. He's staring at me and you, cussing at us, cussing at his glove box. I mean, he's just laying down the bars right now, so hot and so hard. That's basically what AJ Styles' intro makes me want to do. I have too much pride, though, to look like that guy.
If you could guess what song he's beeping to, what do you think it could be?
I'm going to say Gucci Mane. Something by Gucci Mane.
Okay, sounds good. See, that's good. See, that's the vibe we create here at the network. Outside here, we are in Sterling Heights. It's a nice sunny day as we're recording, and people are having a good old time, man. He's beeping out. That's why I love having windows here. We can kind of see what's going on, and he's having himself a good old time,
dude,
man.
He's feeling himself right now.
That's good stuff.
That's the hottest 16 bars you've ever heard.
All right, let's talk about these Detroit Tigers. They're kind of in a tough situation because Al Avila basically let out that the Tigers were basically trying to cut payroll. Other teams got wind of it, and they're trying their best to lowball the Tigers in terms of trying to get JD Martinez, JV. The Tigers are trying to figure out how to get the best value. And then at the same time, we get to open up the internet, go to your favorite website, and you see that Dave Dombrowski's doing his thing again, acquiring talent, selling off all the minor league talent for the Red Sox. They acquire Chris Sale, giving away talent, and we're trying to figure out how to give away our guys. And so it doesn't look like in the early stages of the winter meetings that it's going exactly according to plan. But how are you feeling about Al Avila, the winter meetings, and he's kind of doubling back a little bit, trying to change the narrative of, hey, what mandate? We're not on the cheap. What are you talking about? I got money. What are you talking about? It's kind of like that dude that's gets called out by the someone else at the club and's like, hey, I can buy bottles. Yeah, you can buy bottles on a credit card. That's what the Tigers are. They're trying to act like they got money and funds, but in the end, they're trying to shed some payroll.
I think it's exactly what you said. Al Avila screwed up, which makes me nervous because he's already showing some of his greenness as a general manager. This is a move that Dave Dombrowski would never have done, ever in a million years. You come out after the season's over and says, you know what? We're trying to be more fiscally responsible. You're just staring at that guy jamming away, aren't you?
He's going hardcore again.
So we're going to be more fiscally responsible. We're going to do some things a little bit different. We're looking to shed some payroll. So everybody's up. So you want Miguel Cabrera? Make us an offer. You want Justin Verlander? Make us an offer. Hey, we got a great, promising bat and a really solid outfielder in JD Martinez. Make us an offer. You want Ian Kinsler? Make us an offer. Whatever you want, make us an offer. The entire team, make us an offer. You want Comerica Park? Make us an offer. We'll give you whatever you want. And by doing that, you basically told every other general manager in the league that, hey, you want some, come get it. And they're like, all right, bet. You need to get rid of high-priced players. Well, I'll give you a bag of balls. I'll give you a new Louisville Slugger baseball bat. And it's aluminum, of course, so you can't use it in the pros. And I'll give you an old Wilson baseball mitt. And you give me Justin Verlander. Okay, well, here's the deal, guys. That's not going to work. So I need you to come correct with some. But you got to get rid of guys, don't you? You need to cut payroll. So I'm giving you something for nothing, right? Isn't that what we're doing here? No, that's not what. No, oh. Damn, I messed up, didn't I? Yeah, you kind of did. You really did. Honestly, at this point, I think the trade offers aren't good enough for the value that the Tigers are looking for. The Tigers, what they want is essentially what got you 3/5 of your pitching rotation. They want young, good talent that they can control for a long period of time and who are on the verge of being able to be plugged in. And, hey, we'll give you some high-priced names, but you got to give us some of your top prospects. And some of these teams who are coming after them, they've got farm systems that are similar to what Detroit has. So why would you trade away a Miguel Cabrera for, I don't know, a guy that you already have in your farm system? It doesn't make sense for you to do that. It just isn't smart. And I think that's kind of where they've gotten themselves. I think Al Avila has basically painted himself into a corner. Yeah. And a lot of it's just because I think he's kind of new to this whole general managing thing.
It's one of those things where, yeah, you basically don't want to get, you don't want to get screwed on the deals that you make. You're not going to let go of JD Martinez, and you might end up losing him for nothing. You have to make a deal because of his contract, but you understand that you don't want to pay him. He said that we're not going to add a bunch of $100 million deals, so you know that JD is going to be looking for big time money, and he deserves it. So there's a situation there. You got to get value for it. You got to figure out what to do with albatrosses of the contracts you got for Sanchez and Pelfrey. And Avila has to go out there and save face for the fans, because it's kind of, I was thinking about it as you were talking, it's kind of like, the young teenager that's been waiting for the iPhone. He's excited, and his parents are like, yes, wait for Christmas. And he wraps it up. He wakes up on Christmas morning. He wakes up and it's a, iPhone 5S. You're like, come on, man. It's the 7. We're out here. Where's my, nice camera? Where's my ability to take all these great videos? An iPhone 5S, that's kind of what it is. You're trying to sell me on basically rolling out the 2016 Tigers in 2017? Hell no, man. You're not going to roll out and win with that. How devastating would it be if the only moves you made are to lose Saltalamacchia and to lose Cameron Maben, and you just kind of are now kind of looking at the center field of, an albatross or a mix of Ghosts and Collins and Jacoby Jones, and you still got the same mix? I would go, okay, I'd be confident in the pitching staff, but if you don't find ways to get more out of the bullpen, the aging veterans, I would just be kind of like, ugh. We're looking at another 84, 85 win year, a down year, and you got strong competition from the Indians, who are going to be hell-bent on trying to recreate what they did in 2016. So changes got to be made, but right now I would just say that my confidence is low, that the moves that are going to be made are really going to help this team to where they need to go. And at this point in time, if you can get anything and sell off all these guys, you've seen now that you're not really closer to winning the title than you were in 2015, 2016. It's time for the, Al to kind of push the button and detonate. Let's go. Let's get this going. And if you have to, get prospects and get a plethora of them, and maybe just adjust your goals a little bit, because, to use great metaphor, it's like Al Avila opened up his poker hand and let everybody know he's got the ace king, and he's trying to do his best to make a hand, knowing that everybody at the table knows what he's got. And you can't unback and do it, because if you're going to say that, well, there's no mandate to cut payroll, everyone's going to say spend more. Go out there and spend. Go out and get an Encarnacion. Go out there and make some offers. You got the Dodgers, who are making ridiculous offers for guys like Rich Hill. Make an offer. Make some moves.
And the league told the Dodgers, you got to cut payroll.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense. Why is the league getting involved? But again, to kind of touch on what you said there, you brought up the bullpen, and get the bullpen better. I mean, there are rumors swirling that guys like Shane Green and K-Rod are being discussed as possible trade commodities. And look, K-Rod's here on a very affordable contract. Shane Green, I think, is one of those guys. Maybe I'm just a little bit higher on Shane Green than everybody else in the world, but I really like what he showed last year. I like the way he developed in his role in the bullpen, and I think he's going to be a very good talent going forward. I mean, these are two guys that you can sit there and you can build around. If K-Rod's not your closer, he could at least be your setup guy if you go out there and you spend some money and get a closer. And you're going to sit there and you're going to possibly trade these guys away, and Shane Green's got a very affordable contract. So it makes no sense for me to sit there and see these guys trying to be blown out to do what? And I think at this point, most of the fan base had wrapped their mind around, okay, you know what? We're going to suck for a little bit. But we seen what we got back in return at the trade deadline 2 years ago, when we got Daniel Norris, Michael Fulmer, and Matt Boyd. And we like that. We like what we got. We can sit there and we can live with that. If it's going to hurt a little bit now, but it's going to help us win a championship later on down the road, we're good with it. And I think the fan base was able to finally wrap their brain around it. And now you've got Al Avila, like you said, doubling back, trying to hit the undo button after basically showing his poker hand. And I don't know if he's going to be able to sit there and get out of this. I think at this point, you are kind of dead set with this team, and it sounds like he's okay with going forward with the core that he has. If that's the case, that's fine. You still have to add some pieces to this team, because you're not a complete team. We're going to be in the same situation. You're going to have a bloated payroll, and we're going to be somewhere in the middle of our division. We'll be behind the Indians. We'll be behind the Royals, and we'll be sitting there battling with Minnesota just not to be in last place. Maybe even the White Sox, who got a whole bunch of young prospects in that Boston deal when they sent Chris Sale to Boston.
So, yeah, it's just in an offseason where you kind of have said that it's a transition. We're going to kind of rebuild this team. It's starting off to a slow start. And then, of course, Dave Dombrowski comes in and just puts the hammer on the winter meetings and makes this move. The White Sox, I'm jealous. They got the number one prospect in all of baseball, I believe, by all accounts, in the move. You got a great plethora of talent, and that's what you need to do if you're going to sell, is get talent back. And you knew that. Kind of makes me think a little bit that Dave's rubbing in a little bit in that he kind of gave a prospect to a team within our division. He don't care. He wanted Chris Sale to go along with Rick Porcello and David Price. My God, that is sick.
That's what, 3 Cy Young winners? Oh wait, have we seen that before?
He's trying.
Has Dave Dombrowski done that once before?
He's trying it again.
Wasn't it Dave, or wasn't it David Price? It was
Scherzer and
Max
Verlander.
Scherzer and Verlander. Yeah.
He tried it.
Hey. Oh yeah. What about all that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, he's doing it all over again, just over there in Boston. If anybody does get traded, who do you think is going to be the piece that goes? Because at this point, I'm seeing either J.D. Martinez or Ian Kinsler.
Those are the names. But you might think that now that Sale has moved, there's an opportunity now that teams that want a pitcher could come calling and up their offers for Justin Verlander, but not in the winter meetings. I don't think it can get done. I think that what's going to happen is they're going to ride it out, and probably closer to January, February, where more moves are going to be made, because he's trying to examine what is available out there and to see what he can get for these guys. And I think some moves that might be made are potentially trying to maybe dump a Pelfrey, dump a Sanchez, trying to save as much as you can.
Well, there's been some conversation about those two players possibly being on the move. If they could unload those guys, thumbs up, right? Thumbs up.
No doubt.
That's big time. Even if you got to eat a little bit of that contract, that's big time, because neither one of those guys have been any good for quite some time now. On top of it, I don't know if you heard what Ausmus said the other day, basically saying, hey, those guys are in competition for our 4th and 5th pitching spot in the rotation. You know, they're going to sit there and they're going to battle it out. What?
Yeah.
Like really? We've got some good young talent as far as pitching depth goes. You want to bring those two guys? I mean, they should be used sparingly and out of the bullpen only. So I just don't get it.
And then what stinks is you want to infuse life into your fan base, okay? And you're thinking about, and you've done it, you didn't want Sal Tulamaki to come back. And the name that kind of swirls out there as a rumor to potentially also be in the mix for center field is a guy like Ben Revere, who's coming off of his worst offensive season. A guy that, again, you're hoping. He's a career 285 hitter, but because of an oblique strain, he was hurt. His average fell to 217. You kind of are going, okay, was it just... I don't like to feel like I'm guessing as to what he's going to be. He hadn't hit lower than 298 in his previous years, so that could be a reclamation project, but there's no guarantee. You got a lineup full of guys in that 220 to 260 range. You need to hit. Is that a guy that maybe if you looked at and go, hey, if we're going to, throw the dice, you can't come up snake eyes. You got to hit. You got to make sure that this signing, if you make it, because his salary is going to be around in the neighborhood of $6 to $7 million. And I think it's an upgrade over Gose and Collins, but you also got to decide, okay, if you make this move, you got to be certain that he's better than what Jacoby Jones' potential is going to be.
Let me try to make you feel a little bit better about this. Because
sell me on Ben Revere.
Here's the deal, okay? If in free agency, this is the only guy they go get, because like you said, he's going to cost you anywhere between $5 to $10 million. That's about it. So not a whole lot of money, all right? Like you said, career 285 hitter coming off his worst season, but a lot of that's due to an injury that he had. He's hit basically 294 or better his previous 5 seasons. Remember how we always talk about that left-handed bat that we need? He's that guy. On top of it, he steals bases. He's averaged more than 27 a season every single season of his career, and he doesn't strike out. He only averages 40 strikeouts a season for his entire career. And on top of all that, he's a super solid fielder. So he gives you the left-handed bat you need. He's good on the base paths, something that Ian Kinsler's not, and he provides you with something where he's able to basically turn a single into a double because he can get to second base, and he doesn't strike out. So he can get on base, he can hit for average, and he's solid in the field. And if you're only going to pay him anywhere between $5, $6, $7, $8 million, I'm all about that, and I'm cool with that. The bigger issue I have with this team is how do you upgrade this bullpen? Because again, that's an issue. And how do you sit there and how do you facilitate different parts of this team? Because you're talking about getting rid of guys but it doesn't sound like you're bringing anybody back. So last time I checked, and last time I counted on Baseball America's impression of what your minor league system was, they basically said it was a dumpster fire, and I happen to agree with them. So what are you bringing out of that dumpster that's already on fire? I don't want a used tire that's balding, has a nail in it, and leaks air, and is basically soaked in kerosene, just ready to go up. I don't want that. That's not going to work. It's not going to make this team better. So how do you sit there and how do you upgrade different positions, especially if you're able to move certain guys? How do you do it? And it doesn't sound like the Tigers have thought this through yet. It doesn't sound like they have a plan. If Ben Revere is the only guy you can bring in, I'm willing to take a flyer on a guy who had the worst season of his career last season, because it looks like it was just due to an oblique strain. So if he comes in, checks out, and the doctors say, yeah, you know what, he's good, I'm willing to roll the dice that he's going to get back to basically being that career hitter where he's hitting roughly 294, stealing bases for me and not striking out and playing well in the field. I'll take my chances.
It's one of those things where it's wait and see. We got to see what's going to progress in these winter meetings. I do believe that the onus was given on the down low that you got to cut payroll. It makes sense because baseball has set the tax level at $195, a little bit low compared to what people thought. Most teams thought it was going to be in the $205 million range. So that's the number. You don't want to go above that. And now each contract that's signed has more value. You don't want to pay luxury tax. It makes sense. You got an owner that's extending himself with other projects as well. So you got to build. And I agree that if you had a $205 million payroll and you don't get to the postseason, it's never going to work out. You can't sustain that. So the Tigers are going to look to the scouts, look to the metrics guys to get players in here that are going to be productive at a cheaper rate. Nothing wrong with that. You just got to be honest. You don't go and say that we're cutting payroll and come back and say, well, I wasn't given the mandate. Then why the hell are you spending? That makes you look stupid.
On top of it, I think every Detroit Tiger fan would agree. You know what? Be more responsible with how you spend.
Yeah.
Go out there, get players that are affordable and productive. If we do a little bit of the Moneyball thing, I think everybody's okay with it. On top of it, with the new changes to the CBA, when you go over and you spend into that luxury tax area, now you're giving up draft picks.
It's all about the art of the sell. Okay, he's got to come out and say, listen, we got 4 guys making $20 million plus. All we got to do is complement them better than we have, and we got to do a much better job of surrounding our main guys. Upton, Verlander, Miguel Cabrera, JD Martinez are our core. We believe that in combination with you could call me Detroit Tigers. I could market this very well for you. You could market that with, we got young starting pitchers. We're going to work our asses off to rebuild this bullpen. We're just going to complement them much better than we have in the past with guys that we believe at a lower rate could produce more for us, a la teams that have done well successfully in the past, like the Indians, like the KC Royals. We're going to do that, and we're dedicated to winning in the next 5 years. That's all you got to say. But to come out and kind of be wishy-washy does not empower fan base. It doesn't empower. Right now, my wallet's closed. I ain't spending. Based upon what I've seen, me personally, in terms of what Al Avila has said to me via the tube, via the newspaper, my wallet's closed. His job is to open my wallet. And so I'm looking for the free ducats right now. I'm not willing to pay the $25 a ticket based upon what you're telling me. You got to do a better job of selling me on your team. And that's his job. My wallet's closed. My wallet's closed. Shut.
I agree with you. Do you think that there's any, because at this point,
plus, my ass has got to save for the Pistons and Wings next year. God knows what those prices are going to be.
Justin Verlander was a guy that was talked about as being a hot commodity as the winter meetings approached, and those rumors have kind of cooled off. There was a report that possibly the Nationals can get involved. Do you see any chance that maybe the Nationals take a run at trading for Justin Verlander?
They have a nice system that we could pick from, but I don't know. They have the money. They could do it, and the biggest factor that's going to help them is they got to deal with the Cubs, so they're going to need some pitching. It's a nice opportunity. I think that the conversation will take place, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see that he would want to go from the Tigers to the Washington Nationals. I think he wants a better opportunity, and he deserves that. He deserves to go to a contender.
I don't think it has a chance to happen because they've got so much money already invested in a guy like Max Scherzer, and Mad Max and Justin don't necessarily get along. So there's some clashing of egos there. So I don't know. I think if you bring Justin Verlander in, it upsets the apple cart a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? It too many conflicting personalities, and I think that causes an issue. It'd be nice because, like you said, they've got some pieces we can pick from, but I just don't know if it happens. In the end, I don't know if this team makes any moves going into spring training. I think what you'll see is this team will hold tight, hold steady, and then what'll happen is, like I said, they'll be more or less somewhere in the middle of this division as the season progresses, and then come trade deadline time, that's when you'll make a move. That's when you'll unload a guy like a JD Martinez. There'll possibly be some rumblings about maybe a Victor going somewhere, maybe a Miguel going somewhere. You might see Justin Verlander get traded, or even an Ian Kinsler get moved. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this unfolds as the season progresses along, because I just don't think it's going to happen going into spring training.
So curiosity killed the cat. Should I go next door to the gym and ask the guy what he was bumping to?
Yeah.
Go next door and ask? Okay,
Yeah.
let me do that before we get out of here. All right, stay with us. We'll come right back. I'll give you the answer. What was the guy in the gym bumping to before we get the hell out of here, and we'll play it. All right, so we went next door to the gym. Independent artist named Chelsea said that he was bumping to his own song. I like that.
Yeah.
Watch me get it on.
And we were watching him get it on. He was flowing so hard. Seems like a real cool cat, real nice guy.
It's him.
So yeah, it was interesting. Hey, good luck, Chelsea. Do the damn thing, bro, because you were cutting it up in your car pretty hard.
That's cool. I like that. Get down to your own song. He must have been like, you know what? This is it. This is the song. So check him out, artist Chelsea. We'll see if
Have you ever listened to like any like underground or
No.
real local stuff?
96.3, 100.3, 97.1 the ticket. That's it. That's the rotation.
I grew up with a whole bunch of degenerates and just a bunch of guys who sat there and put together their own CD. It was great. It really was good. It was called Ducktown, because that's what you call bad parts of Hamtramck, Ducktown. So yeah, like straight up just hooligans from Hamtramck doing their damn thing. So it was interesting. I thought it was great, man. I loved that CD. I played it so much, I ended up burning it out. And it was just like cats that I grew up with, man. You never knew that they could sit there and flow so hard over a beat. So interesting stuff.
Good podcast, sir. Great stuff. Let's get out of here. Nice. Thank you, everybody, for listening and downloading our project. All you got to do is search Detroit Sports Podcast. Anywhere you can find podcast, you'll find the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thanks, everybody, again. You listened to episode 174.
Go Lions.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.